Yeah. So, so in your business, you do estate planning. So, I guess what would, I mean, basically how I view that is like, what happens to your money and all your shit when you die. That
Yeah.
basically the,
Now, explain the difference between that and what's the difference between that and a will?
So, a will is like a piece of an estate plan. So, an estate plan is a general umbrella term, and it's essentially correct, like what happens to your stuff after you die, but also what I want to start raising awareness to is what happens when you become incapacitated. Okay, so you get in a car accident, and like you are not able to manage your financial affairs, you're not able to make healthcare decisions. That's a very important piece that I think people often forget about. And so they're thinking, oh, it's my mortality. And especially young people, we don't want to think about us dying. We think we can live forever. So um, that's just like, I'll deal with that later. And so, but it is estate planning at its core is preparing for the inevitable. We're inevitably going to die. I hate to break it to people, and that sounds harsh, but it's the reality. And so it's estate planning is a way to set it up so that you have people in place, persons of authority to, um, according to your wishes that you set up, take on that role of like, okay, this is what he wanted. I'm going to carry it out this way, so it's, you're essentially naming like persons of authority and who you want your stuff to go to, beneficiaries. So within estate planning, there's wills, there's trusts, there's financial powers of attorney, there's healthcare powers of attorney, there's deeds. You guys are very familiar with those. And like even estate planning, not everyone, but I would say most people, first of all, have assets, and most people have already begun estate planning. So let's say you are an employee, okay? You likely have a retirement set up with your employer, a 401k, whatever. When you set up that retirement account, you are designating a beneficiary. That's estate planning. So it's difficult to get young people to think about estate planning because they think, oh, I don't have enough assets. Like, I don't have enough assets to do this for when I'm established, when I'm wealthier, whatever. But it's like, you do have assets. We have bank accounts, we have cars. People our age have real property, one residential, maybe even more. So I'm trying to like debunk that thought that, oh, this is just for wealthy people and old people.
yeah,
It's
stuff,
not,
something you're supposed to do when you're 50
yeah,
or something.
yeah, it's not true. And like, ironically, you have already participated in some aspect of estate planning. So it's a very broad term and it's wide. But when I meet with clients, it's just kind of meeting them where they're at. And I ask, generally speaking, like, what are your assets? But I don't need to know values. Any conversation between a client and myself is confidential completely. But it's like, I don't know if that's another aspect that maybe deters people is they're like, I don't want this
I
person
don't
to
hurt to
know
know all
all
my
my
shit.
stuff,
Yeah.
but it's a confidential relationship. And ultimately, like, the first thing I usually do with estate planning is encourage people to do an inventory of their assets. And you'd be surprised, like, when I was doing the inventory on our assets, like there were certain things that I wasn't even thinking about that, oh, we need to take care of this.
Yeah. I'm sure there's shit that I'm like, that I don't even know, or that I know that we have, but like I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Something,
Yeah. So it's been a really good practice that I'm trying to implement in all the plans that I do. But yeah, I think to that point, we have more than we think we do. And so it's really important to set that stuff up now and then kind of like more easily amend it over time as things change, with relationships and that kind of thing. But especially for people, our age with young children, you've got to think about, okay, where are my assets going? And then who's taking care of my kids? So there's an entire like other piece of it that is so important. And it really boils down to, you work so hard for your money, like make sure it goes to the people that you actually want it to go to. And also protect your family in terms of who's going to take care of them. But like, don't put them through all this unnecessary burden and emotion that they don't have to go through.
But anyway, so, at what age do you think that somebody should get like an estate plan going?
18.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually know like 18-year-olds that have estate plans. And even so now, like clients who had their parents made them set it up when they were 18 and now they're 30 and married and they need to like
adjust it. Can you go and change things, I guess?
Yeah.
I would imagine so, right?
Usually like when you're 18, it is your parents making you do it. So they're just setting up like the very basics. When you get married, I would encourage, you can do whatever you want, but usually what I see is like people set up a joint trust together, or you're considering this whole other person. When you're 18, you're kind of by yourself. So I would say 18 because I want to get to people as early as possible. In Missouri, at least, that's what we consider an adult. Full disclosure, like I didn't have one when I was 18 because I didn't know what estate planning was. So I think I have a long way to go to convince people of that. But, at least now I'm 30, I can speak to that age and wow, like get your stuff together if you don't have one. Because, a lot of my friends now have assets, even though they don't think they do. They are getting married or are married. They have multiple children. And it's like all those things that we talked about that you need to consider with respect to your children and your spouse. That's important to get set up now. Because if you don't do that, if you're not deciding where your stuff is going and who's in charge of it, the state's going to do that. So
if you don't have a will or a trust or anything, and like for example, Gina and I don't, and if we were both killed in a car accident tomorrow, like the state's figuring out what happens to all our shit and the boys and everything.
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on that. We're gonna talk after this.
So when you die without an estate, it's called intestacy. And there's laws of intestacy in every state, but in Missouri, there's like a certain hierarchy of how your assets will be distributed. So it's like rules for the court to follow. So like if you, say you're married, you have children, okay, presumably, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would want your spouse to get everything to take care of the kids, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Well, if you don't have an estate plan in place, Missouri intestacy law says my spouse gets the first $20,000 of my estate, and then the balance is split evenly between my spouse and my children. So now, technically, and that presents a problem because that portion that goes to your children who are
can't touch till they're 18, I would imagine, right?
Bingo. So your spouse has to be then appointed. They're going to be guardian, but they have to be conservator, and conservator is managing assets for people, whether they're incapacitated or underaged. So there's more court involvement even with that. So there's huge ramifications for not having an estate plan, even when you think like things are going to go the way that you want. And that's just if you have mutual children. That's the setup for mutual children. If you're married and let's say you have one child who was with a previous spouse, then half of your estate goes to your spouse and the other half goes to the children. So it doesn't go the way people think that it does. They just assume. And so, yeah, when the state is deciding, when your estate's going intestacy, you're dying intestate, it's going through the court system to do that conservatorship, to distribute these funds. Your spouse has to go to the financial institution where maybe you have a bank account that he or she is not named on, and has to present this court document. Like, I'm the spouse. No, I need proof that you have the authority to distribute these funds. So it becomes a huge burden for people's family. And ultimately, your assets get tied up in the court system. They're subject to court filing fees, attorney's fees. You need an attorney to open an estate. at least now. And so it just, these costs are getting eaten up. You can otherwise, if you have an estate plan, you preserve your assets, you protect your family. And when there's older children, or when there's like different family dynamics, shit can get ugly, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of what I dealt with litigation. And so you're kind of mitigating the risks of things going south, because it's like, no, this is the way mom and dad wanted it, so this is how we're going to do it, as opposed to, I don't know, we'll do it how we want to do it, you know?
Flavor on top of while you're grieving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an important point, because I think I hear a lot of my single friends say, like, well, I don't have a spouse, I don't have kids, like, whatever.
Family, you got parents.
Right. And so, and like, what do they say? Whoever they are, say losing a child is the worst thing that someone can go through. You're losing a child, and then you're having to deal with all this other crap. So it's like, that's, I think, really important to know as like a single person. And then when you're married and you have kids, you're making those people go through it. So it's just,
I would imagine if you don't have an estate plan in place, that I would imagine like you said, there's attorney fees, there's court fees, and there's all these other fees that that you're gonna have to pay, when you could just hire someone like you up front decades before it's actually needed, and it'll probably cost you a lot less than what or maybe not less, but it'll save you so much time and headaches and everything if you just have a plan in place beforehand.
yeah, it will ultimately cost you less.
I would imagine, right? I mean,
yeah,
I
and
don't know
almost
what
every
Critical, like having an insurance policy.
Right.
You're paying or like life insurance. The earlier you get a life insurance policy,
Yeah.
the cheaper it's going to be for you.
yeah,
That's how I always looked at it. I've always looked at it, and trusts were explained, and estate planning was explained to me. So
yeah, it's absolutely right. Life insurance, I think, even like, car insurance, you're not going to drive a car that you're not insured, or there will be legal ramifications for that. And it's the same thing with estate planning. There's going to be all these court costs we talk about, and really like the headache of it all. And your fees, there's delays. Like I never know how long a case is going to take, whether that be litigation or like administering an estate, because I don't know, like a lot of it is out of my control, and that frustrates a lot of my clients. And that's kind of one of the hardest things for me, is that there is only so much control I have. And so, yeah, you're leaving it to the control of others. And so it can come with a lot of burden of that. I mean, I think, it's hard to convince a 30-year-old to spend however many $1,000 when, especially I'm 30, I'm going to live forever, like I said. But
Sounds
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it here.
if I stay here,
Here's all right. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I guess we haven't really talked about it, but we're not in our usual spot today.
easy of adventure unknown.
Yeah. So there's some construction going on in the back, and there's jackhammering the floor up. So
While she was talking about cold plunge. They're putting in a hot and cold plunge back to life.
yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. You got a free day pass or what?
Oh, you can come up here whenever you want. Yeah.
We can have
We can
have 5 people here at any given time.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
The party and have 10.
Yeah. Zach and Pat show
Yeah.
party. Adventure.
Pickleball tournament.
Yeah, pickleball tournament. There we go.
Yeah, let's go, Fenton. Get your shit together. Plus 2 episodes in a row and saying it. They haven't approved it yet.
Oh,
Apparently, it needs to be approved by Fenton before we can use it, which seems kind of silly.
We haven't used it at all. There's no video proof of me and my kids playing pickleball. At all.
Zero.
Gone.
do you have the paddles now? You ready?
I have all this stuff.
Oh,
It's ready to rock. Yeah.
sweet.
I've never played pickleball, honestly. I mean, it looks fun. I feel like that's like the new thing over like the last couple of years.
5 minutes and you go to work out.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's like the new thing. Everybody's like, they open up all like the chicken and pickle place.
You guys never play in high school? We had a whole pickleball.
We did.
We had a whole pickleball thing, like a section of gym class.
Really?
Part of the semester was pickleball.
Yeah.
And then like was different, like your football and hockey, like all these different ones.
Really?
Pickleball was one of them.
Huh? Yeah, we never.
Do that shit.
Yeah, it's so fun. We did that in high school. We did that in grade school too, which,
No, yours.
Ah.
Line dancing. That's how old.
oh God.
Line dancing.
I think we did. Square dancing.
Square dancing.
Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, we did that too, I guess.
Something where you teach you how to fall so you don't get hurt.
Oh, my God. What
Yeah.
are we? That's actually more productive than a lot of things I probably learned.
I mean, it's useful.
Yeah.
For sure. That's one thing. I feel like with like jujitsu has helped me, like being able to fall. Right, dude. Oh God, I haven't even told. I didn't even tell Gina this that I did this. But yesterday, because it's been snowing here. Like, you know, we're like a couple inches of snow outside, and you know everybody's school's been called off for like the last 3 days. And I was basically walking from my driveway into my garage, and I just full feet up. But like the way I landed, it like didn't hurt at all. Like I was like, well, I'm used to getting thrown on the ground, you know, a couple times a week. So,
There you go.
you know, I guess that's one of the benefits of, you know, getting thrown around all the time. You get good at falling.
Transferable skills, man.
For sure.
I was walking, this was the other night. We were just walking around Francis Park. We live in South City. And my foot, I was not paying attention, but it just went through the ice. I mean, up to my knee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like
In the water or like?
it wasn't water. It was just a huge hole. I have no clue where it came from. I wanted to go back. This happened, what day is it? Wednesday? It happened Monday. And I wanted to go back yesterday and check it out.
Figure out what it is.
Yeah. I was just like, did this pop out of nowhere? And I mean, I was right in front of a church, so I don't know, looking for the signs there. Like I made it out scot-free, but yeah, it was, be careful.
Yeah. You never know where you're going.
Road luck traveled, but anyway, I don't know where I was. I'm sorry.
This one kind of went off on a tangent there, but anyway.
Trust.
Yeah, trust estates. So what else, is there anything else you think people need to, you know, kind of know about trust, estate planning, trusts, wills, any of those things that we didn't touch on already?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, like, if people have questions, I mean, I can, like, go into, like, the different documents of it, but
Some of the basic documents required. So, like, if I were to call you, say, hey, I'm looking to get a trust started or estate planning started, what are the documents that obviously you have your interview questions and things that you're going to want to find out, but like, what are some of the basic documents that you're looking for? Like, I have basic documents when people call me to buy a house: W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. Boom. Gonna need those no matter what with who I'm working with.
yeah.
Is there something like that? Like, is there a basic set of documents that people should have on hand, ready to rock and roll when they call you to set up an estate?
I mean, not necessarily. Like I said, I like to meet clients where they're at. Like, there's some people that know the process, some people that just need to amend their stuff and they've already gotten the spiel. But there's also people that have stuff or don't have stuff and just like are like, what is this? You know, like, do I need a trust? Do I need a will? Are they the same thing? So I usually just, like, the first question I ask is, okay, what do you know about it? Because I don't want to be redundant. And so,
What's the difference between a trust and a will?
so a trust and a will, when I'm typically like educating people, first and foremost, I want people to know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And some people don't care, but I would like people to care because it is so important. But when I'm typically like talking about a general estate plan, basic estate plan, you're talking about a trust, you're talking about a will. It's the 4 core: trust, will, financial power of attorney, and healthcare power of attorney. So that's like the comprehensive plan. Now, not everybody needs that. Like I said, I mean, if you have a retirement account and a bank account, put a beneficiary on that and you're good. But there are reasons for having the trust. Specifically, it keeps it out of that court system. It bypasses that probate process. So probate is like generally like the court process of managing, administering an estate. And so when you have a trust, you're essentially setting it up. So you're the grantor, the creator of the trust, and you're also the trustee, so the authority figure, until you become incapacitated and you can't do it. But that's why you have these provisions in place to say, well, if I become incapacitated or I die, this person's taking over. So you're setting up a trust, you're putting your assets into the trust, your house, your checking, savings, investment accounts. You do not put retirement in there. There's tax implications involved. If you change ownership from yourself to a trust with IRAs and that kind of stuff, it's taxable. That's a taxable event. So we leave those out. But you know, all that other stuff, real property, you're going to essentially change the ownership of that to your trust. And You are own the trust is a separate entity, but you still own it. You still have full control over it until like those things happen. So
Well, what about like death benefits, like on life insurance policies? So I've got a bunch of life insurance policies set up. Wouldn't you want those paid out to the trust, so the funds are in the trust, versus being dispersed to the beneficiaries of those trusts? Because my kids are the beneficiaries of my life insurance policies. If I were to die today, that's a 5 and 6 year old getting a lot of money.
Yeah.
When I want that going into the trust for them, versus, is that a little bit different than what you're talking about in terms of retirement accounts?
no, that retirement accounts and life insurance policies, like typically you name individuals as beneficiaries, as you said, but you can name the trust as a beneficiary. So you don't want to necessarily change ownership to the trust, but if the trust is a beneficiary, say something happened to you and your kids are still under the age of majority, it's going to belong, your assets involved with that will belong to the trust and they'll be administered according to the trust.
You're saying instead of putting the policies in the name of the trust, you just make the trust the beneficiary.
Exactly.
So just take the kids off of as the beneficiary. My policies have the trust set up as the beneficiary, and then the kids are on the trust.
Right.
And that's how you would set that up, the best way to do that for kids.
Yeah. And the benefit of that is because if the kids are named, it's going to be subject to like a conservatorship, like I mentioned before, conservatorship because they're under the age of majority. So somebody has to be appointed by the court to manage that money. The trust is going to pick it up, and whoever you named as trustee is going to manage that within the trust. It bypasses that process. And typically when I'm setting up a trust, I will have like this sub trust created within there, and it allows for management of those assets if like a young child was the beneficiary of a trust and something happens and it's like, okay, they're still young. That trustee is going to manage it for their lifetime, and then you can set a specific age, not for their whole lifetime, but you set a specific age that, okay, when this kid turns 18, 25, I want full distribution. So let's say the child is like 5 years old when something happens, the trustee is going to manage that and make sure that the kid is taken care of. And then if your trust is set up, well, make full distribution when he turns 18. When he turns 18, boom. So, but you're not asking for court permission. With a conservatorship, you get appointed, and then the court is overseeing all this. You have to ask the court for, I need to use these funds for schooling, healthcare, blah, 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 like all basic things. And the court's not going to say no to that, but you still have to ask the court for that. And so those particular assets, we would keep those out of the trust, but we would name the trust as a beneficiary. And so because the trust only manages what is in the trust, right? So for those particular assets, your financial healthcare power of attorney, that's where if you became incapacitated, that's going to step in and you're going to have agents named to manage those assets if you're unable to. So kind of circling back, you've got the trust that manages the assets within the trust. And then typically
Could I put my financial advisor on there?
Sure. Yeah.
Then once so I pass away, the money gets transferred to the trust. Then the financial advisor I assign to the trust can go in and then take the money and reinvest it elsewhere. Is that?
Yeah, as long as you're using that money for the benefit of the beneficiaries.
Yeah.
And actually, like if you're not doing anything with that money to like grow it or diversify, that's could be seen down the line as like a breach of your duty, because you're supposed to, as trustee, manage those as best you can for.
Well, that's why I'm like, if I pass away, I want somebody to take
all that money, and while considering Connor and Oliver aren't going to be able to get it for 13, 14 years. Yeah.
Right. And, obviously there'll be, I'll say, hey, this is how much per year goes to my ex-wife for the care of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
Splitting costs with her like we've been doing. Also don't want to hurt. Sorry, Melissa.
Yeah.
I don't want you to get it's for the kids. But anyway, yeah, like I would want somebody to come, like, so you wouldn't, because that's not your fiduciary duty, is to manage the funds and making sure they're invested. I would need to add a financial advisor as a part of the trust that can go in and reinvest those funds somewhere else.
Yes, that's the trustee's duty. So if the trustee's a financial advisor, great. If the trustee is a, average Joe, whoever, then they would want like a financial advisor overseeing that.
Dude, so I could actually name, my financial advisor. So I could actually name her in the trust as one of the trustees then of it. Okay.
Yeah, she would essentially be the successor trustee to you.
Gotcha.
So you have power as long as you are able to do it. And
That's something that you would recommend somebody doing is so being a single father, pass away, naming my financial advisor, is that a smart move, naming them as a trustee to that?
yeah, I mean, if you trust that person, if you have like a good enough relationship that you think is going to sustain time. And honestly, I see people amend their trust all the time to name different people.
Yeah.
Right. So if things change, you can always just amend it and it's quick. It's easy. But yeah, I think that's a great thought. I think thinking about like who are going to be those persons of authority for you. It depends. It's different for everybody, right? Your circumstances is different than Zach's circumstances. So, it's just like knowing that the person's going to do a good job and, they have certain fiduciary duties that they have to follow, best interest of the beneficiaries.
Or even if you don't be to a financial advisor, but you even know within your will stating like, hey, as the trustee of this, I want this person to manage my funds, so that they then take those funds and transfer it to people that we name in the will to manage the funds. Or is that something, I guess, different?
So is that, in that scenario, is the trustee your financial advisor?
So let's just say I name Zach as my trustee. And within the will, though, then I state, Zach, I want this person, my financial advisor, to manage the funds within this trust. So then Zach now has his fiduciary duty is to make sure those funds get to that financial advisor.
His fiduciary duty is to make sure he's acting in the best interest of your beneficiary. So, yes, you could write that down.
But he might think that that's not the best. And
yeah, and he might be right, he might be wrong. If he's wrong and somebody contests it, then there might be issues there. I guess what I'm getting at is if you want that, yes, write that down. And Zach's a good guy. More likely than not, he's going to honor your wishes. I just, I can't help but to think with my litigation brain, which is like, where can that go awry?
right.
And
That's why I'm asking, because I want your litigation brain to be like, you should probably do it this way.
yeah, I mean, it's still something written down that is your last wish. Now, what's the like efficacy or what grounds can that document stand on? I don't know. If it's notarized, like then you have another person to come in and say, yeah, that's what he wanted. It gets a little hairy with that. But it's not to say, I would say 9 times out of 10, like the person's going to do the right thing. And unless it's not a good move for where your assets need to go. But, there's that like percentage that I'm always thinking about. Like there's nothing like necessarily holding that trustee to that specific task.
Gotcha.
That's
why I wanted to. There's more wiggle room for you to do it that, or for the person that's named as the trustee. Like you, so me dying, I don't have as much control if I just put it in my will and give it to and then name Zach the trustee. Whereas if I had named my financial advisor as the trustee, that gives me a little bit more say in like how that's going to work. Because obviously the financial advisor is going to do what's best for that with the money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to think too, like, are you thinking that financial advisor is at a certain firm that I like them to be at? Maybe if something happens 30 years from now and that person is maybe no longer a financial advisor. So like You have to decide what's important for you. And, I say like, you could technically put that in the trust. It is very uber specific. I haven't seen it to where it says like, I want this person to be trustee, but I want that financial advisor to be overseeing it. But, you know, like if that's what you want in there, we could put that in there. What happens afterwards, you know, like probably what you want, most likely what you want will happen. But there is that little like piece of me that's like, well, someone could argue that that wasn't the best thing for the beneficiaries. But you have to think too, like, who's going to contest that? Is anyone actually going to contest? I mean, there's plenty of like things where people could come in and make a big stink, but really no one wants to deal with it. So they just kind of just let
it be.
go the way that they should. And so, you know, there's that too. But you want to have as much control as you can. And so, you know, putting that in writing would be a good idea no matter what. And then
I guess that was kind of the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah.
You get so much more control when you set up an estate plan versus letting
totally.
state
The state, yeah, was the last thing I wanted to.
review us.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just like you have to hire an attorney. It's just
You have to hire an attorney anyway, so it's like why don't you do it beforehand, and then you get all you get everything that you want to happen with all your stuff.
Yeah. And there's like a certain statute under Missouri law that gives lawyers like when they are, you know, the lawyer that helps clients open up an estate, like there's a statutory fee, like it's a percentage of the assets. And so I myself don't utilize that statute. I just charge hourly basis, but like it can amount to a pretty good
I imagine it.
number. And like proportionally speaking, like I've had some family members, they've had to open up an estate for like their dad's checking account that's really not worth that much, and an attorney's taking a huge piece of that just by like percentage of the value. And it's like, I don't even care about this, but like I have to do this. And you know, so it just I don't know.
I didn't realize that was a way to do it. That was a way to do it. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So a percentage base. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Just flat fee.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like our business, I guess. You know, a little different, but
Yeah.
wow.
So yeah, I mean, but when you have a trust, you know, like people are like, so trust or will, you usually want to have both anyway. And that's because if you have like assets outside of the trust, not like retirement or life insurance, you'll have beneficiaries. So those stay out of the court system still. But if you like acquire a property later in life that you forget about, or leave something out because you didn't take inventory, then there's this will that's there too. It's still going to have to go through the probate court. But if you name your trust, it works in tandem with your trust. So your trust is the beneficiary under your will, and then the medical healthcare power of attorney. So that's like another huge piece of estate planning that people don't necessarily like think right away. But it's like that scenario is where things are dicey. Like it's a tough situation for your family to be in anyway, because you're in a position where you can't make healthcare decisions, right? And so leaving that to chance is just like so much worse for your family than if you had like specifically a person named in there to make decisions according to the way that you would want. And so Missouri's form specifically is like healthcare power of attorney, which names an agent to have the power to make those decisions, to be able to designate their power, to decide disposition of your remains, to decide like anatomical gifts. And assuming you are talking to that person about that. I mean, Brian and I the other day like brought up, do you want to be cremated or buried? And it's like, I can't believe I'm having this conversation, but it's important because he's my agent under my power of attorney. And like, you know, I want him to do what I would want
To happen.
Yeah. So
You can pre-plan your funeral.
I've heard about that. Yeah. Seems a little crazy, but
That was part of the networking group that I was in. And that's what she did, was pre-planning your death. Well, you pay over a period of time, which is like in the long run, it'll save you tens of thousands of dollars.
I'm sure.
Doing it up front versus doing it at the time. So
Wow.
those people are amazing. They have so much forethought. My grandma was one of those people. And she has 5 children. So that's my mom's mom. she had it down to, I want these songs played. She had the money for the altar boys or girls for the funeral. It was like amazing. It went so seamless. And it was like, this is going to sound some type of way, but it made her death like that much easier for our family to process. And like we could think about all the happy times. We weren't being drugged through this mess. And it's like my mom and her siblings get along fine, but like, you know, like there's always room for a little bit of debate. And it was like, it was a beautiful thing. And it was like such a gift to her family to be able to do that. And I'm sure that wasn't easy for her. I mean, she was a widow and she's planning out her death, and that's not fun for anybody. But like, you have to think about your family, and like, it was the best possible scenario for us because we were able to grieve properly, and it just like makes you like, it makes it kind of a beautiful experience. We all knew it was coming, right?
Sure,
but
of course.
So yes, that's a piece of it too. That's really interesting because some people get really deep in that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and that's a big expense usually when like someone dies, and you know the funeral expense is a big one, and so that's usually coming right out of the estate, and I think people don't often think about that.
Big money.
Yeah,
Funerals are lots of money.
yeah. There's a lot of money to be made in that.
Cremate,
Yeah.
but donate my organs, cool, go for it. But
Yeah, I don't really care what you do with it. After I'm done.
Yeah,
I don't need to be in a hole. I don't need to be in a grave personally. I don't know. Maybe extra
extra trash
You know,
storing.
yeah.